all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus Delendis 8. Redpilled Guide to Sanity, Healing Mental Health for the Awakened Man, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Redpilled Guide to Sanity, a field guide for men who still notice reality. The tyranny of the travel toothpaste, how solipsistic wombs hallucinate misogyny in office furniture to justify their emotional tyranny. A surgical, syllogistic smackdown of the delusional Marxist framework that transforms inanimate objects into rapists and female psychopathy into self-defense. I once watched a 3-year-old throw a tantrum because the supermarket didn't stock bananas in her favorite color. She stood there, rigid with outrage, screaming at the produce department as if the bananas had personally conspired against her. Her mother scooped her up, whispered that the world was being very unfair, and carried her to the cookie aisle instead. That child, I realized, now grew up to write academic papers about travel toothpaste. I am not being hyperbolic. A paper published, peer-reviewed, cited, exists declaring that miniaturized toiletries are instruments of phallospatial hegemony. The writer insists that travel-sized toothpaste caters to hypermobile capitalist males enforcing economic dominance, a tube of Colgate, 50 milliliters of mint paste. This is what the Academy now produces instead of philosophy, instead of truth. The tantrum of a child who never learned that bananas come in yellow and the world does not rearrange itself around her preferences. But here is where the mask slips and you see the machinery beneath. The writer states with breathtaking honesty, we must completely abandon the toxic patriarchal demand for reciprocity. Read that sentence again. The golden rule, treat others as you wish to be treated. The foundation of every civilization from Athens to Jerusalem, the moral architecture that makes human cooperation possible, is toxic. Mutual respect is a trap. Fairness is oppression. What she wants is not equality, not equity, not justice. She wants your submission. Permanent, unconditional, and enforced by the state, by HR, by the smile of the woman who tells you that your silence is healing. She tells you that men cannot be victims of discrimination because men own the system. Tell that to the 22 veterans a day who put shotguns in their mouths. Tell that to the 93% of workplace deaths that are male, the miners, welders, roofers, and roughnecks who built the infrastructure she complains isn't cushioned enough for her comfort. Tell that to the father who worked 60 hours a week for 15 years only to lose his children in family court because a judge decided his ex-wife's feelings constituted evidence. Men are the only net lifetime taxpayers in every Western nation. They pay into a system that taxes them to fund their own dispossession. I will show you in the pages ahead exactly how this spell works. I will take the article apart sentence by sentence, expose every redefinition, every hidden premise, every emotionally manipulated category error. You will see how epistemic violence functions as a thought termination device designed to silence facts. You will see how radical self-defense serves as the universal alibi of every emotional abuser who ever weaponized tears to escape accountability. You will see how the demand that men be socially reprogrammed to yield space, is not progressive, it is parasitic. The ancient cry of the tick demanding the dog apologize for its blood. The toothpaste is not your enemy. The woman who convinces you it is, that is your enemy. And by the time you finish reading, you will never look at a travel tube the same way again. Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. Deconstructing the default. How everyday objects and legal fictions perpetuate phallospatial hegemony. Have you ever paused to consider the insidious, pervasive nature of systemic oppression? Probably not, if you are a cis-hetero male. The patriarchy does not merely reside in boardrooms, courthouses, or legislative halls. It is woven into the very fabric of our daily environments. It is a relentless, aggressive colonization of reality. To dismantle the systemic violence of our time, we must awaken to the silent, omnipresent epidemic of phallospatial hegemony, the insidious design of reality itself to cater to male entitlement at the direct expense of marginalized bodies. We must adopt a new rallying cry for the revolution. Deconstruct the default, defund the patriarchy. Consider the supposedly mundane artifacts of daily life. Look closely at the items perched upon bathroom counters or tucked into briefcases. They are not neutral. The corporate infrastructure demands constant, aggressive mobility, a paradigm built explicitly around the male body and male rhythms. Take, for instance, the travel toothpaste. Its very existence caters to the hypermobile, capitalist male who zips across the globe to enforce economic dominance, demanding his domestic comforts be miniaturized and commodified for his convenience. Meanwhile, marginalized bodies are forced to navigate these transient, hostile spaces without respite. Furthermore, we must examine the systemic neglect embedded in consumer health. Consider the probiotic capsules lining pharmacy shelves. Modern medical science, a historically phallocentric institution, routinely dismisses the complex holistic microbiomes of women and marginalized genders. These capsules are marketed as individualized fixes, mirroring the capitalist patriarchy's obsession with hyper-individualism rather than collective, communal care. They are biological band-aids offered to a society structurally designed to induce inflammatory stress in the subaltern. Perhaps the most glaring example of phallospatial hegemony is the humble seat cushion. Why is the modern chair, whether in an office, a vehicle, or a public transit system, so agonizingly hostile to the human form? Because the standard human form for which these environments are engineered is male. When a marginalized individual requires a seat cushion, it is not merely a personal preference. It is a desperate, physically taxed rebellion against an architecture of spatial violence designed by men for men. The cushion is a scar of patriarchal engineering. Naturally, the patriarchal establishment will attempt to weaponize its fading power against this profound realization. Men's rights activists, MRAs, and other agents of toxic heteronormativity frequently whine about a fabricated crisis, that men are somehow undercounted in discrimination law. This is a masterclass in gamma bias, where male systemic dominance is completely erased to center male victimhood. Discrimination law exists as a shield for the marginalized against systemic power. Men, as the architects and primary beneficiaries of the legal, economic, and social superstructure, cannot be victims of the system they own. To suggest otherwise is to engage in epistemic violence. Men are not undercounted in discrimination law, they are overrepresented in power, framing the loss of absolute, unchecked patriarchal monopoly as discrimination is a staggering display of entitlement. Similarly, the reactionary backlash against feminist epistemology frequently attempts to pathologize female survival mechanisms. The so-called female emotional abuse cycle, a myth propagated by patriarchal therapists, is a desperate attempt to criminalize women's intuition and emotional labor. When a woman reacts with justified anger, when she establishes rigid boundaries, or when she demands accountability from the emotionally stunted males around her, she is not abusing him. She's engaging in radical self-defense against the daily, microaggressive terrorism of phallocentrism. The real abuse is the male expectation that women must endlessly manage, soothe, and absorb the psychological deficiencies of the adult men around them. We must completely abandon the toxic patriarchal demand for reciprocity or equal treatment. Equality is a trap designed by the oppressor to maintain the status quo. We require equity, We require a revolutionary reallocation of empathy, resources, and spatial reality. It is the unilateral duty of all institutions, academia, corporate, and legal, to immediately adopt asymmetrical standards of care. Men must be socially reprogrammed to yield space, to remain silent in the discourse of marginalization, and to accept their diminished role in the collective healing. Those who protest, those who attempt to invoke logic or fairness to shield their unearned privilege, must face immediate and severe social sanction. Their ignorance is not a valid perspective, it is a threat. The time for polite discourse is over. Examine your travel toothpaste, your probiotic capsules, and your seat cushions. See the invisible chains of the patriarchy binding you to their design. Rise up, dismantle their spaces, and let us forge a world where male comfort is no longer the default axis of human existence. Deconstruct the default, defund the patriarchy. The solipsistic womb, deconstructing the syntax of spatial entitlement. A prostate cancer survivor does not weep over the dimensions of a waiting room chair. He is grateful the chair exists at all, bolted to the floor by men who poured the concrete, grateful simply to be vertical and breathing while his name is called. And yet, in the swamps of modern academia, a new species of griever has emerged, one who gazes upon a 3-ounce tube of toothpaste and sees shimmering in the mint-flavored gel the entire architecture of human subjugation. I want you to hold that image in your mind for a moment. A fully grown adult, subsidized by federal grant money, typing the phrase phallospatial hegemony with a straight face, demanding that reality itself be sued for poor ergonomics. This is not philosophy. This is a psychiatric event disguised as scholarship. Let us begin where all rational inquiry must begin, with definitions because the left cannot survive them. The word hegemony derives from the Greek hegemonia, meaning political leadership or dominance of one state over others. It is a term about power, governance, and the organized imposition of will. Spatial simply means pertaining to space, physical dimension, area, extension. So when our author concatenates these into phallospatial hegemony, she is making an extraordinary claim that the very dimensions of physical space have been politically dominated by male will for the purpose of oppressing marginalized bodies. Not that some spaces are poorly designed, not that ergonomics could improve. That space itself, the chair, the tube, the capsule, is a weapon of intentional patriarchal malice. This is not a metaphor, she means it literally. And that is where her epistemology collapses into clinical solipsism, the ancient disease of the mind that confuses the boundaries of the self with the boundaries of the world. Consider the logical structure of her argument. She asserts that travel-sized toiletries exist to serve the hypermobile capitalist male. She asserts that seat cushions are necessary because chairs were designed for male bodies. She asserts that probiotic capsules reflect phallocentric hyperindividualism. In each case, she assigns malicious agency to inanimate objects, a tube of Colgate, a gel cap, a foam pad. Now watch what happens when we formalize this. Premise 1. Objects designed for standard use reflect the intentionality of their creators. Premise 2. Standard use has been defined by male bodies and male rhythms. Conclusion. Therefore, all standardized objects are instruments of patriarchal violence. Do you see the category error? She has conflated economic scaling, the industrial reality that manufacturing thrives on uniform dimensions, with moral intentionality. A factory produces a 3-ounce tube because it fits in luggage, because airlines restrict liquids, because supply chains optimize for portability. The tube does not know you are a woman. The tube does not know you exist. The tube is a tube to hallucinate oppression in its dimensions is not critical theory. It is paranoia wearing a mortarboard. Now let us discuss what she calls the biological band-aid of probiotic capsules. Modern medical science, she informs us, is a phallocentric institution that dismisses the holistic microbiomes of marginalized genders. This claim would be news to the thousands of female researchers who have pioneered microbiome science over the past 2 decades. It would be news to the National Institutes of Health, which launched the Human Microbiome Project in 2007 under the direction of Dr. Jane Peterson. But facts are unwelcome in the solipsistic womb, where the internal void demands that the external world be recast as a personalized attacker. The probiotic capsule is not a band-aid, it is a triumph. It represents thousands of years of accumulated knowledge, from Van Leeuwenhoek's first glimpse of microorganisms to the double-blind clinical trials that proved specific bacterial strains reduce inflammation, improve digestion, and strengthen immune function. Capitalist health solutions do not suppress communal care. They elevate the baseline of human survival so that the individual is strong enough to participate in community in the first place. The Marxist death drive prefers shared suffering to individual vitality, because misery loves not just company but equality. And what of the spatial violence of the chair? Here the projection becomes almost theatrical. This writer would have you believe that the standardization of furniture dimensions is an act of aggression against marginalized bodies. But who built the chairs? Who mined the ore for the steel frames? Who logged the forests for the plywood? Who breathed the fiberglass insulation in the factories where these chairs were assembled? Overwhelmingly, men. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that men account for 92.3% of fatal work injuries in the United States. The miners, welders, roofers, loggers, and roughnecks who forge the infrastructure of civilization are not designing chairs for their own comfort. They are sacrificing their bodies so that someone can sit in an air-conditioned office and compose grievances about the firmness of the cushion. In 2022, 5,190 workers died on the job in America. Over 4,700 of them were men. Where is the spatial hegemony in a coal mine? Where is the phallocentric privilege in a 1,200-degree foundry? She does not mention these men because they do not fit her narrative. They are inconvenient data points in a theory that requires male omnipotence and female fragility to sustain itself. Let us distinguish, as clear thinking demands, between discomfort and violence. Discomfort is a neutral biological signal, a prompt from the body to adjust, adapt, or relocate. Violence is the intentional infliction of physical harm. The writer deliberately conflates these two categories through what we can call semantic inflation, the rhetorical strategy of upgrading a mundane annoyance into a moral atrocity. Your chair is uncomfortable? That is not violence, that is furniture. Your toothpaste is small. That is not colonization, that is packaging. Your probiotic is individualized. That is not patriarchal atomization, that is biochemistry. The inflation of language is not accidental, it is tactical. By redefining inconvenience as injury, the writer transforms her own inability to adapt to the world into a moral indictment of the world itself. This is the psychic machinery of ressentiment. The weak do not overcome the strong, so they redefine strength as sin and call their weakness righteousness. And here we arrive at the dark comedy of the whole production. A revolution fought over orthopedic cushions, an uprising against travel-sized toiletries, a rebellion demanding that the infinite customization of physical reality be mandated by institutional policy so that no marginalized body ever experiences the crushing tyranny of a standardized seat width. This is not the stuff of Bastille storming or constitution drafting. This is a toddler screaming because the high chair does not recognize her uniqueness. The great traditions of Western civilization, from the dialectic of Socrates to the natural law of Aquinas, from the mixed constitution of Polybius to the due process of Magna Carta, all assume that the mature adult adapts to the world and then improves it through reason and labor. The new gospel inverts this completely. The world must adapt to you instantly, completely, and at the expense of everyone else. And if it does not, you are a victim of systemic violence. This is not progress. This is the eternal tantrum of the stunted soul, demanding that reality itself be reconstructed to fill a void that no external change can ever fill. The ultimate projection in the text is the accusation that men demand women manage their psychological deficiencies. Read the article again. Who is demanding that institutions manage her psychological deficiencies? Who is demanding that language be policed, that spaces be redesigned, that probiotic marketing be overhauled, that men be socially reprogrammed to yield and remain silent? she is. She is demanding that the entire civilization act as her emotional support animal. The female emotional abuse cycle she dismisses as a myth is demonstrated in real time by her own rhetoric, the eternal grievance, the perpetual victimhood, the demand that others repair what ails her while she takes no responsibility for her own adaptation. Women file over 70% of divorce initiations in the United States. Family courts award mothers custody in roughly 80% of cases. Men are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide. These are the numbers that the solipsistic womb cannot contain because they contradict the foundational lie that women are the universal victims and men the universal oppressors. The truth is far less convenient and far more tragic. We are a civilization of mutual dependency that has been convinced by intellectual frauds that dependency itself is domination. So examine your travel toothpaste. Feel its smallness in your palm. Appreciate that a supply chain stretching across continents delivered fluoride and freshness to your hand for $3.49. Sit in your chair. Uncomfortable, imperfect, built by calloused hands in a factory you will never visit, and be grateful that men, before you poured the concrete, forged the steel, and died in the mines so that you could have the leisure to read this at all. Then close the tab on that article, walk out the door, and build something. The void does not care about your cushion. Only logos fills it. Only truth. But this linguistic counterfeiting is merely the opening move in a much larger confidence game. Having debased the currency of meaning, the woke ideologue does not stop at redefinition. She constructs an entire parallel reality where logic itself becomes oppression, where cause and effect are dismissed as patriarchal constructs, and where the fundamental laws of rational thought are denounced as violence. I will not play chess with someone who declares the board oppressive and every legal move an act of aggression. Instead, I will drag this entire ideological architecture onto the unforgiving anvil of formal syllogistic logic, where her euphemisms shatter, her contradictions bare their bones, and her lust for unaccountable power stands naked in the merciless light of deduction. The tyranny of the hysterical, unmasking legal fictions and the demand for submission. A wise man once told me that the fastest way to spot a tyrant is to watch how they redefine words. The woke hysterics of our era have transformed the English language into a Kafkaesque funhouse mirror, and nowhere is this demonic alchemy more apparent than their bizarre fetishization of the word equity. Let us fix the grammar immediately, as any sane civilization must before it proceeds to logic. Equality is the objective application of the law to the individual, blind to biological accidents. It is the sword of Lady Justice demanding proof, merit, and reciprocity. Equity, conversely, is modern newspeak for institutionalized theft. It is the forced redistribution of resources and status based on the bogus, unprovable metric of assigned victimhood. When the writer of this psychological screed demands you abandon equality for equity, she is not asking for fairness. She is a toddler throwing a tantrum because she cannot win at Monopoly, demanding the bank be robbed to subsidize her terrible decisions. Notice the breathtaking malice embedded in her command to completely abandon the toxic patriarchal demand for reciprocity. The bedrock of Western civilization, from Aristotle's Nicomachean ethics to the Magna Carta, is mutual exchange, contract, and shared duty. To frame fairness as a trap is the exact psychological profile of a parasite justifying its attachment to the host. She wants the fruits of male labor, male sacrifice, and male engineering. Yes, even the dreaded seat cushion and travel toothpaste she bizarrely believes are instruments of patriarchal torture. Without offering a single thing in return, it is the ultimate feminine shadow, the desire for unipolar dominance masked as liberation, demanding the heavy lifting of civilization continue while she reaps the rewards, entirely unaccountable. To shield this brazen parasitism, the writer deploys the ultimate logical fallacy: collective guilt. She claims that men cannot be victims of discrimination because they are the architects of the system, dismissing the very real systemic collapse facing modern men as epistemic violence. Let us apply the scalpel of formal logic to this Marxist drivel. In a universe governed by natural law, only the individual acts. Only the individual can be wronged. To blame all cis-hetero males for the state of the world is as logically bankrupt as blaming a 5-year-old boy for the Peloponnesian War. Yet look at the cold, hard data. Men account for nearly 80% of all suicides. Family courts strip fathers of their children and wealth on the unverified word of a vindictive ex-partner, leaving men literally uncounted in the very discrimination laws she claims protect her. The true systemic violence is the genocentric machine grinding men into dust, harvesting their tax dollars to fund a welfare state that disproportionately benefits women while telling those men they are the oppressors. Because her argument lacks any grounding in reality, this writer must rely on linguistic terrorism. Let us construct a simple disjunctive syllogism to expose her true motive. Either justice is a blind, universal standard applied equally to all individuals regardless of their sex, or justice is a vengeance-driven tool applied selectively to punish demographic groups. The article explicitly demands asymmetrical standards of care based on sex. Therefore, by her own admission, her ideology is a confession of vindictive female supremacy, not justice. She does not want to dismantle the hierarchy. She simply wants to place herself at the top, wielding the whip of HR and the state, to extract her pound of flesh from men who built the very podium she stands on. To maintain this anti-male supremacy, she must rationalize her own cruelty. She pathetically attempts to rebrand the female emotional abuse cycle as radical self-defense. When a woman screams, breaks boundaries, or emotionally terrorizes a man, the writer tells you it is merely her justified anger against microaggressive terrorism. This perfectly maps to dark triad manipulation. A psychopath does not view their victim as a human being. They view them as an obstacle to be demolished. The writer is giving theological absolution to the hysterical woman, licensing her to act like a tyrannical toddler under the guise of political resistance. Real strength is emotional regulation, the mastery of the self over the chaotic void of internal hysteria. A woman who cannot sit in peace without blaming her emotional breakdown on a seat cushion is not a revolutionary. She is a psychological child demanding the world accommodate her arrested development. This leads directly to her demand for serfdom. She argues for a unilateral duty for institutions to force men to yield space and remain silent. This is not equity. This is the reimposition of serfdom, driven entirely by genocentric parasitism. She wants a permanent, uncredited servant class of men who fund the infrastructure, die in the wars, maintain the power grids, and write the software, while simultaneously being commanded to grovel in silence before the altar of her unverified trauma. She wants the benefits of the patriarchal system she claims to despise, the safety, the sanitation, the infinite consumer choices without having to do the heavy, dangerous labor of maintaining it. It is an ideology of pure resentment, a jealous hatred of the masculine capacity to build, ordered toward the destruction of the good, the true, and the beautiful. And how does she plan to enforce this pathetic matriarchy? Through the barrel of a gun disguised as corporate empathy. She demands immediate and severe social sanction for those who protest. This is the leftist institutionalization vector laid bare. When you cannot win a debate using logic, you must silence the opponent. The HR department has replaced the Spanish Inquisition, and the mandatory diversity training is the modern auto da fe. Call-outs, deplatforming, and policy punishments are the tools of weak, narcissistic minds who cannot survive the crucible of open dialectic. They do not want to defeat your argument, they want to destroy your ability to feed your family. It is totalitarian religious excommunication for heretics of the new woke orthodoxy, a satanic inversion where victimhood is minted as absolute, unquestionable power. We must categorically reject this feminized wailing over microaggressions. Reality is friction. It requires hard work, objective measurement, and the unyielding pursuit of logos. The awakened man cannot negotiate with a parasite that demands his blood while complaining about the temperature of the needle. We must divorce ourselves from the hysterical demands of the collective, embrace the heavy burden of our own agency, and build new parallel institutions based strictly on merit, reason, and the transcendentals. Let the hysterics scream into the void about travel toothpaste and patriarchal seat cushions. We have a civilization to rebuild. We are the architects of tomorrow, and we will not yield our space to the madness of the mob. The truth is our hammer, logic our anvil, and we will forge a world where reason, not emotional tyranny, is the default axis of human existence. Let us ruthlessly audit the actual ledger of suffering, since the high priestesses of grievance refuse to do so. They weep over the systemic bias of office furniture, while completely ignoring the blood-stained statistics of the real world. Where is the spatial hegemony when 92% of workplace fatalities are men? Where is the male privilege when our brothers are buried in mining collapses, impaled on construction sites, and shattered on the asphalt so that society can enjoy its paved roads, its heated homes, and its pristine academic lounges? We do not live in a patriarchy. We live in a protectorarchy, where men act as the literal shock absorbers of reality. To demand equity from atop the safe, comfortable pedestal built by male sacrifice is the zenith of moral bankruptcy. It is the squalling of an ungrateful child who smashes the plate of food she did not hunt, cook, or pay for. When the woke cathedral demands you abandon reciprocity and accept asymmetrical standards, they are not proposing justice. They are issuing a theological demand for your total submission. They diagnose your resistance to this humiliation as toxic, while rebranding female emotional abuse as radical self-defense. Let us define terms. If a man enacts the female emotional abuse cycle, the relentless psychological dismantling, the chronic boundary breaking, the weaponized hysteria, he is a monster. When a woman does it, the cultural Marxists hand her a megaphone and call it empowerment. This dark triad manipulation is validated by a legal system hijacked by gynocentrism. Look at the family courts, where fathers are systematically vivisected from their children based on unverified, tearful accusations, while men are forcibly extracted to fund the very system that enslaves them. Look at the suicide rates, men taking their own lives at 3 to 4 times the rate of women. Driven to the abyss by a society that tells them their sacrifice is oppression, their strength is pathology, and their voices are violence. You have been tricked into feeling guilty for carrying the weight of the world. You have been psychologically manipulated into apologizing for the very strength that keeps the lights on and the barbarians from the gates. The Marxist inversion wants you to trade your birthright of objective truth for a global maternal warm suffocation where you are slowly strangled by HR mandates and cognitive beggary. But the spell is broken. You see the mechanism now. You realize that a society that defines oppression by the size of a probiotic capsule is a society that has lost its mind, its soul, and its connection to the transcendent good. You are the inheritors of the architects of Western civilization. You are the descendants of the men who drafted the Magna Carta, who charted the oceans, and who split the atom. Stop yielding space to hysterical narcissists who think a revolution is fought over a seat cushion. Reject their fake morality. Shun their redefinitions. Build your own institutions grounded in the unyielding bedrock of logos, merit, and natural law. Let the worshippers of the fragile self wail in their safe spaces. You have a civilization to reclaim. Walk out of the matrix, speak the truth with a backbone of iron, and never apologize for being the axis upon which reality turns. And now, the sponsored book introduction Redpilled Guide to Sanity, Healing Mental Health for the Awakened Man. You're holding a book that will either save your life or piss you off so badly you'll chuck it into a bonfire. Good. Fire purifies. Let me be clear. This isn't for the guy who cries during corporate diversity trainings or thinks toxic masculinity is a real term. If you're content slurping soy lattes while your ex-wife's lawyer bleeds your bank account dry, stop reading now. Go knit a sweater. For the rest of you men who felt the gnawing void where purpose used to be, I'll cut the therapy speak. My name's Conrad Riker. I lost my kids, my savings, and nearly my mind to a system that pathologizes masculinity as a disorder. After my divorce, I spent nights in a studio apartment scrolling TikTok until my thumbs bled, doped on SSRIs that turned me into a compliant ghost. Then I woke up. This book is the antidote to every lie you've been fed. Modern masculinity isn't broken, it's under siege. Silicon Valley hijacks your dopamine circuits with algorithms designed to addict. Divorce courts strip your assets under the guise of equality. Feminists pathologize your biology while Big Pharma sells you pills to numb it. I've dissected these traps, from the 19-year-old kid rotting in a psych ward after TikTok meltdowns to the 73% of men financially castrated by no-fault divorce. The solution isn't another meditation app, it's rebellion. Reclaim your biological edge with dopamine detoxes used by Navy SEAL's Bulletproof, your assets against gynocratic courts. Swap woke therapy's victimhood for stoic discipline. This isn't self-help, it's a war manual. Chapters like Big Pharma's War on Testosterone and The Marriage Plantation expose industries profiting from your demise. Signai Grindset and Anti-Fragile Men deliver blueprints to rebuild. I don't care about your feelings, I care about results. Weakness dies here. If you're ready to exit the matrix, to trade simpering vulnerability for unshakable sovereignty, turn the page. If not, there's a TikTok dance tutorial waiting to numb you into oblivion. Choose Redpilled Guide to Sanity, Healing Mental Health for the Awakened Man, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.